What up, Internet? This is Chris coming at you from sunny South Florida. You're about to watch one of my math videos, so I just want to let you know that the technology I use in this video can also be used in a live online web meeting. What does that mean? That means whatever is on my screen you can also see on your screen. That means that we can talk to each other live at the same time. That means that while I do an example for you, you can ask me questions if you don't understand anything. This is just like having a one-on-one tutor, except even more effective because everything is being recorded. So later on in the week, if you forget anything that we covered, you can go back, watch the video, and refresh your memory. I deliver the material in a way that's very easy to understand, even if you hate math. So if you would like to schedule a meeting, please email me at chris@mathmeeting.com. Once again, chris@mathmeeting.com. I hope you enjoy this video, and take care.
In this video, I'm going to teach you how to evaluate logarithms without using a calculator. And before I get started with the examples, it is really important that you understand some of the properties of logarithms before I get started. And I wrote for you in the blue some of the properties of logarithms that we're going to use in these problems. And the first one is the exponent property. Now notice you have an r exponent in this logarithm. That r can be dragged to the front and be multiplied by the logarithm, or if it's already in the front, in this case right here, you can take it and make it an exponent. And if it's in the exponent, you can take it and bring it to the front. And also the second property that we need to use for these problems is the log base b of b equals 1. So basically what this means is if your base is the same as the number inside the logarithm, simple as that, it just equals 1. And once again, this is going to make a lot more sense once we get started with the example. So let's get started with the example. And if you notice on the right hand side of the screen, I wrote the steps for you, and step number 1 is make the number inside of the logarithm the same as the base. And notice that we have a base 2 in this particular example. So I want to make the number inside the logarithm the same as the base, which is 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as log base 2 of 2. Now if you notice in the original problem we had a log base 2 of 8, and now I have changed it to a log base 2 of 2, and you're probably telling me that I'm not allowed to do that, and you are exactly correct. So in order to compensate for changing the 8 to a 2, I'm going to make it into a 2 raised to the third power. Now I haven't changed anything one bit because 2 to the third power is equal to 8. And once again, I want to reemphasize that the number inside the logarithm has to be the same as the base. So if 2 cannot be raised to some power to equal 8, then this method is not going to work, because the number that is inside the logarithm, which I'll highlight for you, this number has to be the same as the base. So once again, if the 2 couldn't be raised to some power to equal 8, then this method does not work, and you cannot evaluate it without using a calculator. So let's move on to step number 2, which is bring the exponent to the front. And this really is as simple as it sounds. We're using the first property of logarithms. You're allowed to bring the exponent and bring it to the front. And I put a little dot in between to show that they're being multiplied by each other. And once again, we just use the first property that I wrote for you, which is the exponent property. I just brought the exponent and dragged it to the front. Now notice how our base is exactly the same as the number inside the logarithm. And if you look at our second property, if our base is exactly the same as the number that's inside the logarithm, that just equals 1. So once I'm just going to bring down the 3. And once again, I'm going to say it again. The base is the same as the number inside the logarithm, so the log base 2 of 2, according to our second property, is equal just to 1. And 3 times 1, very simple, is just equal to 3. And now we have evaluated the log base 2 of 8 without using a calculator. So let's move on to another example. In this example, we have the log of 100. And the first thing I want to point out to you is, if you notice, there is no base in this log. And if there is no base written inside the log, it is understood that it has a base of 10. So just to make things a little bit easier for us, I'm just going to write a base of 10 so it's easier for us to solve the problem later on. And that's just understood. Whenever there is no base written for the logarithm, it is always assumed that there is a 10 written as the base. So let's get started with the example. Step number 1 is make the number inside the logarithm the same as the base. So we have a base of 10. Now I want to make the number inside the logarithm the same as the base, so I have to make this one a 10 as well. But notice we had 100 in the original problem, so I'm going to rewrite this 10 as 10 squared, because 10 squared equals 100. I have not changed the logarithm one bit. Moving on to step number 2, I want to bring the exponent and drag it to the front. And once again, we're allowed to do this according to the first property that I wrote for you, the exponent property. You're allowed to drag the exponent and drag it to the front of the logarithm. So I'm going to take this 2, drag it to the front, and I'm going to put a little dot to show that it's being multiplied. Now if you notice, we have a base of 10, and now the number inside of the logarithm is a 10, and according to the second property, if the base is the same number that's inside the logarithm, that just equals 1. So I'm just going to bring down this 2, and I'm going to multiply it, and instead of writing it as a log base 10 of 10, since the base is the same as the number that's inside the logarithm, I'm just going to rewrite it as 1. And once again, that's our second property that I wrote for you. If the base is the same as the number that's inside, it's equal to 1. And 2 times 1 equals 2. And now we have evaluated the logarithm without using a calculator. Let's move on to our last example. Here we have the log base 3 of 1 over 27. Now you're probably getting a little intimidated because you see a fraction in this problem, but it's really not that much more difficult than the previous 2 examples that we already did. So let's get started with the example. Step number 1, make the number inside the logarithm the same as the base. So we have a base of 3. Now I want to make the number inside the logarithm the same as 3. So instead of writing 1 over 27, I'm going to write 1 over 3 raised to the 3rd power. Now you notice that we have a 3 in the base, and now we have a 3 inside the logarithm. Now you guys are probably a little confused because you see that we have a fraction 1 over 3 raised to the 3rd power. So in order to get rid of this fraction, if you remember from algebra, if you have a positive exponent in the denominator, you can write it as a negative exponent in the numerator. So I'm going to rewrite this logarithm as log base 3. Instead of 1 over 3 to the positive 3 in the denominator, I'm going to write 3 to the negative 3 in the numerator. Now moving on to step number 2. I'm going to drag the exponent and bring it to the front. Once again, I'm just using the properties of logarithms, the exponent property. I'm going to put a little dot to show that we're being multiplied. Now we have a -3 multiplied by a log that has the same base as the number that's inside the logarithm. Notice how we have a 3 in the base and we have a 3 that's inside the logarithm. So whenever the base is the same as the number inside, according to the second property, that just equals 1. So we have a -3 multiplied by just 1. -3 times 1 equals -3. And now we have evaluated this logarithm without using a calculator. Now there are many other types of logarithm problems which I didn't cover in this video. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me at chris@mathmeeting.com or send me a message on YouTube. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like the way I teach. And once again, I hope you enjoyed my video, and take care.